So good morning and welcome. Welcome to day two. And so I want to recap a little bit about the process, about this whole process. And really the most crucial part of it. We have to remember, again, this is all going back to how the brain remembers information, how the brain first stores information, and then how we recall it. And recall is really what we do most of the time. You've read I'm sure in 100 books and 100 courses and 100 quotes about, the world within is the world without, right? That what's going on inside of you is really reality. What you see outside of you is projection. And a lot of it actually seems kind of mystical, and maybe the ideas seem a bit antiquated, but it's a reality of it. And we look at anything that we think of as a good thing or a bad thing, things we like and things we dislike. When you look at, when you go to a restaurant, how do you know what to choose from the menu, right? How do you know which foods you enjoy? How do you know which desserts you enjoy? It's from your reference, right? You reference, my previous experience with spaghetti carbonara is based on my history. My like of certain wines is based on my history. My like of certain colors is based on my history. I like music based on, partially based on mood maybe, but based on my history. So I'm really experiencing the world through the lens of my past. And that's actually it's not a bad thing necessarily, because that's just really how we function. It's how the brain is wired up. It's how we function. And it's how we make sense of the world around us. So at a very early age, of course, what do we do when we're children? We're putting everything in our mouth. We're trying to get a sense of what things feel like. And of course, we're exploring everything because everything's brand new. So when we're very young, we're cataloging the world. And the only time that this becomes a problem when we're cataloging the world is when we run into some challenges. We run into less than optimal ways of living. We run into people that are not great educators, not great role models, and really provide us with the challenges that we tend to fight with a little bit as we become adults. So when we look at the experience here, when we're talking about the various parts of our life experiences, how we view career, how we view contribution, how we view spirituality, how we view family, how we view wellness and relationships are all, again, based on our experiences of the past. And here's the interesting thing, though. So today we're going to talk about spirituality and family. And let's talk about family first, because I think that can be a real challenging point in time for people. So my experiences around family, actually, so for myself personally, when I think about family and my immediate reference, or my historic immediate reference, the way I used to reference family quite a bit, was actually from a very negative point of view. And the reason being, of course, is that my experiences growing up were less than stellar when it came to interpersonal relationships, family relationships. My parents simply were challenged. Their parents didn't do a very good job. Their lives were very challenged. And unfortunately, as the expression goes, hurt people, right? The challenges were pressed forward. So this is the idea of the I Am Project. When we work this process is to make sure that I'm congruent. So I know who I am. I've expressed myself, and I've really taken the time. And as you go through the course, as you start through the video course, you'll find that it's, I'm going to request you to spend a week to 2 weeks really working on this, working on your I am statements. And you remember what we had said yesterday, that the I am statements are the values, character strengths, or beliefs that you need to remind yourself on a daily basis. It's the perspective you need to look through when you're making decisions about your life going forward. So for myself, I had said that I'm perseverant, I'm empathetic, I'm intelligent, right? I'm courageous. I have a lot of these attributes and character strengths. And when I know they're going to be hugely important, they were really important for me to be here today, right? To take a chance to put this information forward. And it was a bit of an unnerving process, right? When you step out there with an idea that you believe in so powerfully, to take the chance to push it into the world. So I needed courage. I needed persistence to get to this point, because lots of obstacles and challenges and mistakes being made on the way just to get here, as you can well imagine, right? There's no straight line there's no straight, easy path to going forward to making anything successful. So So I know what my character strengths and values are, and now if I go through and look at my history, of course, I find evidence of it. And I remember when. I remember when I was courageous. I remember when I was perseverant. I remember when I showed empathy. I remember when I was intelligent. I remember all the points and times in history, and I can borrow those ideas. And I remember them in massive detail. So we also talked about the visual, the auditory, the kinesthetic aspect of memory. So I take the time to actually journal and recall my I am values. And so I am courageous. Well, there took some courage to be here, but when else in time was I courageous? Right? And I think about maybe a few of the circumstances of the course of my life where I showed real courage and actually overcoming obstacles. So not only I remember it, but I remember how powerful I was. I remember, yes, there was some fear, but I did it anyway. I moved through it. And the more I can remember circumstances like that, the more I can borrow on that courage to pull into my body today to move forward. When I remember different points in time when I show persistence, I remember the persistence. I remember what that looked like. I remember the circumstances that were involved when I really showed the most persistence. I remember what happened on the other side of persistence, right? The things that were moving forward for me. And the challenge is, for most of my life, I remembered when I felt shameful. I remember when I felt inadequate. I remember when I felt hurt and betrayed. I remember all those things as well, right? So it's all part of your history. It's just what we choose to remember. And it's something that was the missing part that, people said, yes, you need to do your I am statements. It's not a new conversation, certainly, but really it's just how you do it. That's how you pull it forward. And we're actually dealing with the way the brain stores and retrieves information. And unfortunately, most of the things that you experience day to day, of course, going to be based on feelings. And your feelings, again, are stored ways of responding from your history. So my stored feelings of betrayal and hurt and anger, right, and fear and mistrust, all those, a beautiful mix of emotions, right? A lot of it actually comes from family. So when I think about the emotions around family, to me, there's a really big gap between where I am and where I want to be, right? So if this is my chosen place to be, this is my core, my core designation. This is what I've decided. These are my core strengths, my core values, my core principles. And I know what that is powerful. I'm trying to build my life to that, right? But I know that historically that there was a huge gap between my core, what I decided my core values are, and then of course that space between, again, where I am and where I want to be. So I actually had to look at that space, and inside that space were a series of memories that I needed to access and actually and kind of nullify. And what I mean by nullify is, I had to look through this lens, start looking through the lens of the I am. So if I am courageous, if I'm intelligent, I'm empathetic, I'm perseverant, and I know what that feels like, I know what that looks like, and I know, and I have that space. I own that space because I took the time to really develop and really remember and really embody my I am values. From that vantage point, if I look at all the challenges I had within my family, from this vantage point, okay, it's really important. If I stay here and I look down and I see the younger version of myself, I see the 5-year-old, right? I see the 10-year-old, right? I see the young kid who wasn't having a lot of fun in that part time of his life. But if I look from this vantage point, what can I offer from here to help that situation? What would I do, or what can I offer that I didn't know then that I do know now? Could I offer empathy? What would my intelligence say? What would my perseverance say? Right? What would my courage say? And in my bedroom, I've got a small picture of me when I was 5 years old. And I'm sitting on a little bit of a little makeshift shrine I set up. And I go by the picture occasionally, and I actually talk to this 5-year-old. Sounds a little silly, but I talk to the 5-year-old and I say, thank you for the courage. Thank you for being so courageous. Thank you for being so perseverant. Because of what you're able to withstand, I have the life that I have. Right? And I spoke briefly yesterday about Carolyn Misses talking about the sacred contracts, meaning that before I was born, I asked for this strength, I asked for this courage, I asked for this intelligence, I asked for this perseverance. And the only way you're going to get that kind of strength is you have to work for it. And of course, life offered me the challenges. So when I look at this gap, what we do is we go through this process and we actually look at how many obstacles are in the way. And when you think about the obstacles that are in the way, the obstacles are not in front of you. The obstacles are always behind you. Their obstacles are always sitting in our history. And the problem is the obstacles that are in the way are sitting in our history in the emotional context of when those memories first happened. So again, if I think back, when I think back to the earliest part of my recall here, let's say I was 5 years old. And at the age of 5, I remember the circumstances surrounding it. The very first thing that comes to mind is a visual context. I remember visually remembering. Okay, perfect. So I see the memory in my mind, right? So that's the visual aspect of the memory. There's no auditory component, and there's very little kinesthetic. A little bit around my solar plexus, but more visual. And it's color. It's a color image, and it's moving. Right? So again, when I'm recalling, I'm observing the recall. I know that the space is there. I'm observing in my mind how the memory at that point in time was stored. So I'm not becoming the memory. And because I use the board, I'm looking outside of me. I'm not actually reliving the experience, which is quite often we do. I'm just simply observing it. And I know from this vantage point here, the emotions that I'd rather be in, the emotions that I've chosen to live in, the emotions that are going to take my life from here forward into a different place, even more so tomorrow. There's a different emotional context. What I feel here is certainty. What I feel here is uncertainty. But the uncertainty is of a child. The certainty here is of an adult who's done the work. Is it not possible, and do we not, on a daily basis, unknown to us, become the child and forget about who we are? Right? This is who I am. Remember, the child is who I was. Right? So when the most powerful part of this process is that not only do I know, not only am I aware of the values that I've chosen to build my life on, I'm aware of the emotional context. I know what it feels like to feel courageous. I know what it feels like to feel perseverant. I know what it feels like to remember feeling intelligent. I know what it feels like to remember empathy, right? So intellectually, I understand what those words mean, but more importantly, I know where I feel in my body. And as I just speak the words, I feel this energy building up inside my chest. Now, if I take the time in the first week or 2 weeks of the program and I really go through this process, journal on it, I really make this extremely powerful. Once I understand how the mind works, I understand how memories are stored, how memories are recalled, and I get to choose the memories I bring forward and powerfully implant in my mind and body, right? So I have easy access to them. When I'm being challenged, my brain's going to go into my history and say, do you remember when? Right? So if I'm having a challenge around, so we talked about family and spirituality. If I have a challenge around spirituality, which I did, and the emotion around spirituality and the emotion around family are different than the emotions I've chosen to live through and chosen to live in day to day, which one do I choose? Well, I actually have a choice. So I do actually have a choice to choose either this or this emotional context, right? The gap in between. I have a choice between living here or living here in the fear of my childhood. Which one would you choose to live your day, live through your day in, day out? If you don't make this choice, if you don't decide and don't work on developing the I ams, you will inadvertently become the lesser version of you every single time. Anytime you're being challenged, so if I'm being challenged by spirituality, this one goes back, and my reference point around that is probably around maybe 14, 15, I think, right? And again, there's a sense of betrayal here. So when I think about God and I think about faith and I think about perhaps spirituality and I think about, that context that I'd really love to have in my life, but my memory of it, and the emotional context I have of it is a teenager, 14, 15-year-old teenager who feels betrayed, then is that emotional context going to get me any closer to closing this gap for me? Why would I want to feel like a betrayed 15-year-old boy rather than a 53-year-old man who's actually done the work? Why would I want to feel continuously around family like a 5-year-old child who's just really confused and afraid than a 53-year-old man who's actually done the work? If we don't take the time to understand that the lesser emotions are really there to say, what do you think? Not this is what you should do. It's asking you, what do you think? But because I've done this work, I have a choice. I know who I am. Conversely, I also know that the lesser emotions that show up in my body time to time, and they still do. Remember, this is your brain is simply sifting and sorting information, saying, this is the experience coming at you. This is when you actually had an experience around that topic, the experience around spirituality. What do you think? Do you want to choose this one here? Because remember, the last time you were really imposed in spirituality, it didn't turn out so well for you. So are you sure you want to go there? My mind is simply asking me, what do you think? It's not saying you must be this 15-year-old child. So because I've done this work, the adult in me can show up and say, this is the way I've chosen to feel, and this feels really different. So this can't be me, because this is who I've chosen to be. Do you see what I'm saying here? This is so, so important, and this is where we get thrown off. This is where the work is never done properly, I think. Now I have a split screen in my mind where this is who I am, and again, I won't be repetitive. This is who I was. This is who I am. This is who I was. And we can go in every context around here and do the same thing. And you'll find that all the obstacles come from this point in time in history. But if I know this one here is visual and it's auditory and it's kinesthetic, because I took the time to remember it, third person perspective, using the I am intuition board, right? So I've removed it from my mind. I'm observing it in front of me as I'm observing it here, and I see this gap. So I am not in that gap. I am here, right? This is the I was. This is the I am, right? This is the I was. This is the I am. There's a huge difference in those 2 points. So when I look at this process, when you actually go through the I am project course itself, the very first one we work on is wellness. Remember, we talked about wellness yesterday briefly. And we build wellness into the context. So once you go through the module on wellness, you learn how to break down all the barriers, learn how to stay in your I am, and now you're powerfully connected. And just for a second, let's move these other ones away. All right, let's move these other ones away. So now you have wellness, the I am, here we go, and wellness, right? So once we develop wellness and we understand what the I ams are, and we build wellness to it, of course, what's very fascinating, and you'll see this when you go through the program, and I found this so interesting. What I thought I wanted around the idea of health and wellness was different, was much, much different when I declared my I am values first, right? No, I'll walk through that again. What I thought I wanted from the world of health and wellness was very, very different when I decided what my I am values were first. When I stabilized my emotional state, when I stabilized my values, when I actually decided to even declare what they were, when I looked at wellness and decided what that means to me now, it actually was different. All right? Because when we think about wellness, without the context, when we have this conversation, without the context of the I am stabilizing you, who's making the decision? The lesser version of you is making the decision on your health, which is why rarely do fitness goals work for 85–90% of the population, which is why weight loss rarely works for 85–90% of the population, because you're making decisions around wellness based on the emotional context of who you were, not who you are or who you've chosen to be, because we never really made that decision. Right? Old culture, when you think about older cultures outside of North America that have been around for thousands of years, they make their decisions based off of some powerful history. Now, for better or for worse, it's still a grounded position. Now, a grounded position is not a great thing if it's moving in the wrong direction, but it'd be an incredibly powerful place to be in when you're trying to move forward into a more positive, enlightened sort of way. So now that I know what my I am was, when I built the wellness part into it, wellness actually was quite powerful. Now here's a fascinating piece. Second module you'll go through is spirituality. So when you look at spirituality, I'm going to look at spirituality not just to the I am, but to the I am and the wellness piece as well. Okay, so now I have the context of wellness to support the I am. How much more powerful can we make decisions when we are on track? Our body feels good. Our mind is clear. We are rested. Our stress levels are more or less under control. How much more powerful can we be? So we think we start working on spirituality. I may take the time over the second module to go through spirituality and work through not only through the context of the I am, but also the context of spirituality. And any decision I make on spirituality has to support and benefit my goals around wellness. Any goals around or I have around wellness, any movement I make there has to actually support and enhance spirituality. And when you look at these two together, do they not actually work together beautifully? Are they not beautifully powered together? But now you see this visually in the context of the I am. Now we have this incredible synergy between spirituality and wellness. I'm going to ask you something when you go through this process. If I forget my wellness and if I'm negligent on my wellness and that actually moves away from where I want it to be, does that affect my sense of spirituality? And now that you see it on the board, I'm sure you'll agree, yes, this has a powerful effect. So when we're making decisions, most of the decisions we make day to day are in a very linear context. We do it out of context with the rest of our life. We work harder, right? And saying, I'm going to take on some extra shifts because, we need some more money and the kids need braces and they're about $5,000. So it's going to be expensive. So I'm going to work harder and harder and harder to do that because that's what a good parent does. But at the expense of my wellness, at the expense of my spirituality. There's other ways to go around. It's not the first thing we think of isn't the only way to get things done. But when we're thinking in a very linear context, we make decisions without first really assessing the rest of our life powerfully and making sure that we don't actually move ourselves away from the most beautiful parts of our life and the effort to accomplish one goal. When I'm looking at family and building the context of family into my life, and I do the work, and again, to the context of the I am, right? So your I am values, I am statements, which again, you'll work with in the module number 1. And I start building on family. Does wellness and spirituality have anything to do with my impact on family? Well, absolutely, most certainly, right? So in this context here, when I look at family, if I marry the energies of these together, is this not beautifully synergistic? Well, my experience around family and the ability to actually overcome my obstacles, overcome my history, right? To rethink it really is what we're doing. In the context of wellness and spirituality now being huge, powerful supporters of my goals around family, isn't this more powerful? You got to admit it is, right? It's just it's a very, very massive way of looking at this whole process. So now that if I move wellness away, and I decide that maybe it's okay. I don't want to put myself first. But if you really neglect your health and you really neglect your physical health and your physical well-being because you want to be, part of the expression. This is not to be meant in a derogatory form, but you want to be a martyr to your family. You want to martyr your health to your family. Is not your family relationships actually going to be harmed because of your lack of wellness? And what if you don't focus on your own personal development and your own spirituality? Does that not affect how you show up here? We've been told for for generations that we really need to focus on making sure that we are good, that we are healthy, that we are sound. In the context of the I am, now we actually see why, because any improvement that I make on myself, health-wise, or my spirituality, is going to have a beautiful and powerful effect on the way I show up inside my family. In fact, and to not do this has a direct consequence, negative consequence to this. But we don't often see that. And so often I've worked with family members over the years that actually felt so resentful because, it was a bit of a catch-22. They had huge gratitude for having a family. Perhaps somebody was a stay-at-home mom and they were just hugely grateful in the beginning to do that. The father was grateful to go to work hard, right, provide for his family. But over a period of time, both parties, the father became resentful because he's working harder and harder to try to make ends meet, and there was no life showing up for him. The mother was working harder and harder to look after everybody, but there was no life for her. And so the father got stuck in the career, and the mother got stuck in the family dynamics, trying to manage a household. And unless they were able to hang on to their health and hang on to the spirituality, they would find that this would actually start to erode powerfully. And I think, in so many circumstances, the challenges that we face, unfortunate challenge we face as parents, for example, it's not that we're trying to be better than our parents. We're always trying to improve each generation, which is sound advice for sure. But it's just in the way we go about it. Not only do I want to do things better than my parents did, because we always look for innovation, how do we make things better? But I want to do it in a whole different context. And I want to make sure that I don't suffer I don't want to suffer for my children's success. I don't want my health to suffer for my children's success. I want to be as well-rounded, funny, this is all round, be as well-rounded as possible when I go through. So again, when I look at the context of family through the idea of wellness and to the concept of spirituality, which are completely in line with my I am values, because that was the foundational premise in which I made my decisions on. Now, my improvement in family, is my improvement here because I'm better here? And my improvement here, doesn't the improvement here actually affect that? If I'm doing better with my family, do I not feel closer to my mission statement? Do I not feel closer to God or to whoever I believe my creator is because I'm so good here? Do I not feel blessed? And I feel blessed, do I not give thanks here? If I'm giving thanks here and I feel blessed here, does it not improve my state of wellness? As I improve my state of wellness, so I'm well fed, I'm nourished, my body's healthy, my mind is clear, does it not make me better here? And being better here does not support that. You see it, right? You see where I'm going? It's a synergistic way of working with things, but the problem is it's really hard to do it inside your own head. Because when you have a conversation in your mind, who are you asking the questions of? Right? Let me put that again. When you're asking questions inside your mind, who are you asking questions of? Who's answering? Every memory you've ever had, every experience, good or bad, you've ever had is in your mind and in your body. So when you go internally to ask a question, who's answering on your behalf? If I ask a question about spirituality and I only ask inside my mind without first stabilizing myself and my I am values, am I finding that a 15-year-old is answering, but I don't know it's a 15-year-old. I just have this response coming up saying, this means betrayal. And this is what it feels like. And it doesn't feel good. But I adopt that emotional expression in the body and mind of an adult. The adult feels like a betrayed 15-year-old. With that level of maturity, what kind of decisions can I make on my life around that are going to be powerful? 15-year-old wasn't doing so good. I'm not using him as a reference point of how I should lead my life. But I need to know that he was there. I need to understand that that's where it was coming from. But the powerful part is I can do it from a vantage point where I can observe him. I just don't have to become him. I can observe the trauma of my past from here, so I can observe him. I just don't have to relive him. Right? I can observe the challenges around wellness, but I can observe him and his challenges. I just don't have to become them. I'm trying to get this point across powerfully, because if you're anything like me, you have a bunch of books on your nightstand. I bet I have in my house close to 1,000 books. I got books on my nightstand. I think there's probably 15, 20 books on my nightstand. I have probably 50 books on my coffee table in a nice little setup. I've got books on my windowsill. I have this office here. I've got about 50, 60 books here. I've got books in boxes. I've got another library in my other office. And I've got books upon books upon books. Which book is going to be the one that's going to move you forward? Which book has made the biggest difference? If you had picked one author and one book, and you did exactly what that author told you to do, word for word, and you had a highlighter and you had a pen and you took notes and you journaled it, do you think your life would be in a different place? Well, the likelihood is yes, right? So when you think about most religions, of course, and not turn this into a religious conversation, but you think about most religions over the generations, they studied a book. and they had study guides for the book. But when you look at personal development, we just have a series of thousands upon thousands of books and authors, and there's some really great information out there. Again, I wouldn't trade my library for anything. But I came to a point to realize that knowing more doesn't mean you'll do better. And quite often, what we end up doing, and well, I'll speak for myself, and maybe this will resonate with you as a part of your potential experience. But anytime I felt challenged, anytime I felt frustrated, instead of actually doing something about the problem, I would just go know more about it. Want to lose weight? Well, maybe I should, maybe because I didn't finish these last 5 or 6 programs and I kind of dropped off, maybe it just wasn't for me, right? Maybe that wasn't the program. Maybe that wasn't the diet. Maybe that wasn't the right personal trainer. Maybe that wasn't the thing. So I'm going to find something new. And I'm really excited coming out of the gate because it's something new and I feel like, okay, I'm starting, I'm not quitting. And then I still find myself in the same position several months later, right? Back to where I started, right? So it's like knowing better, but unable to do better. And what ends up happening, of course, is that we never make it past the finish line. How about books on spirituality? How many books have we read that really have made beautiful sense? And we knew that we could just incorporate a few of those values, how wonderful that would be in our life. But the insecurities of our past keep showing up over and over and over again, right? Because we really haven't done the work. We read about the work, right? We've listened to the courses around the work, but we actually haven't done the work. And again, there's one thing to have an intellectual understanding about it, to have some awareness, to be quotable. And let me ask you, how many of you, would your friends come up and say, she or you give the best advice? And when the conversation is over, you're going, man, I wish I could do that for me. I wish I could take my own advice, right? So it's not that we lack the intelligence. And I think this is the part that, this is the part I'm really trying to assist people with, is that you have all the information you need. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just simply here to tell you how to do it. All the beautiful information, all the money you've spent, all the courses you've taken, you got some great information. If you didn't buy another book, would you have enough information to lead an amazing life? Well, probably. Right? So I'm not suggesting that you have to stop buying books. What I am suggesting, though, is that if you look at this process going forward, wouldn't it be wonderful to finally put the kids to bed? Wouldn't it be wonderful to find a way to be so synergistic in the way that you run your life? That yes, challenges are going to show up, and yes, your history will come up to ask you what you think occasionally. But to have such a separate context, such a powerful separate context in how to run your life, that you can buffer these emotions powerfully, right? Especially around things like family, especially when things are around personal health. That when the insecurity, the anxiety came up, you realize that just because I'm feeling doesn't mean I have to own it. Because I know who I am. I've taken the time to know who I am, and I've actually developed this personality, developed these character strengths, so they're so visual, they're so visceral, I can feel it. Right? It's the most important work we can do. And going back to what the ancient scholars had said, really the conversation is know thyself and then be that. That's my own little addition to the conversation. Not only know thyself, but be that. How about choose thyself? Choose who you're going to be. Choose the character strengths. Choose the values. Because we have a very short period of time to be on this planet. So we need to choose wisely. Okay, guys, thank you for your attention this morning. Hopefully this is offering a little bit of insight into why so many of us, so many in the world, are really caught up in some of these challenges. And it's again, it's been a 10-year process getting to this point. There's a lot of neuropsychology, neuroscience in the process of putting this together. There's some philosophy. There's obviously some beautiful spirituality, and you can actually build this thing forward and use it any way that really fits the meaning of your life. My job is simply to offer you a method and a tool to really stabilize yourself powerfully, so the road going forward is going to be so much more predictable if you know who you are. And no more excuses, right? We know the reason why when we don't have what we want, it's the way we remember our history around the challenging parts of our life. That is simply it. Because in the current moment of time, in my life right now, there is no problems. All problems are just all the problems that we encounter day to day is just the way we think about them. Some people see problems as opportunities, and some people think there's problems as obstacles that are insurmountable. It's just the way we remember. I need to remember who I am. Okay. All right, guys. God bless. Again, hopefully this was a service. And if it is, so please let me know if this makes sense to you. Again, this is me stepping into the world with this, and I'm scared and I'm courageous. But for me, it's so important to let people know, because I understand how frustrating it is to do the work, to spend the money, to be the person who deserves it, who really deserves a different quality of life, but unsure why we're unable to actually grasp it. And I know what that demoralizing feeling is like. And if I can offer a tool to help lever you out of that hole, to lever you out of the darkness into a life that is by your own design, then I think my time here on this planet is well spent. All right, take care, guys. Have a good day.